Welcome to Creepytalks, where hidden fears come alive through chilling horror tales. Dare to listen as every story pulls you deeper into the darkness. Story 1. The Thing Behind My House. I used to think my backyard was the safest place in the world. Our house sat at the edge of a quiet town surrounded by thick woods. Behind the house was a large backyard that stretched almost half an acre before the forest began. When I was a kid, that yard was my playground. I built tree houses there, dug holes looking for treasure, and spent countless nights staring at the stars. Nothing bad had ever happened there, until last summer. It started with something small, something I didn't even think about at the time. Footprints. One morning I stepped outside with my coffee and noticed strange marks in the wet soil near the back fence. They looked like footprints, but something about them felt wrong. They were too long. At first I assumed maybe a deer had wandered into the yard, but the deeper I looked, the more confused I became. They weren't hooves. They were shaped like human feet, but the toes were too long. And there were only 3 of them. 3 massive claw-like toes pressed deep into the dirt. I remember staring at them for a long time, feeling a strange chill run through my body. I laughed it off. Probably just some weird animal, I muttered. I wish that had been true. That night I was sitting in my room around 1:30 a.m. watching YouTube when I heard something outside. A faint noise. Crunch. Like someone stepping on dry leaves. I froze. My bedroom window faced the backyard. The sound came again. Crunch. Slow. Heavy. Something was walking back there. At first I thought maybe it was a raccoon or stray dog, but then the steps stopped. Right under my window, I held my breath. For almost 20 seconds there was complete silence. Then, tap. Something lightly tapped the glass. My heart nearly stopped. I slowly turned my head toward the window. The curtain was slightly open, and through the small gap, I saw something move. A shape. Tall. Too tall. At first, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. It looked like a person standing in the dark, but the proportions were wrong. Its shoulders were too narrow. Its arms were too long, and its head was tilted sideways, like a curious animal studying me. I couldn't see its face, just a pale shape, completely still, watching. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The thing outside didn't move either. We stayed like that for what felt like an eternity. Then slowly, very slowly, its hand lifted. Long, thin fingers pressed gently against the glass. I screamed and jumped back from the window. The shape outside instantly vanished into the darkness. I stayed awake the entire night with the lights on. I kept telling myself it was just someone messing with me. Maybe a tall guy wearing a hoodie. Maybe a prank. But deep down I knew something wasn't right. The next morning I went into the backyard to check. And that's when I saw the footprints again, the same ones from yesterday, 3 long clawed toes, except now they were everywhere, dozens of them, circling the house. Some of them were directly beneath my window. And the strange thing, the footprints were deep, like something extremely heavy had been walking there. But the stride was huge. Whatever made them had legs far longer than a human. I called my friend Jake to come take a look. When he saw them, he went silent. "What animal makes tracks like that?" he asked. "I don't know." Then Jake said something that made my stomach twist. "Bro, these are coming from the woods." He pointed toward the tree line. A trail of the prints led straight into the forest. But that wasn't the worst part. Another trail came out of the woods and stopped right under your window. That night I decided to set up a camera in the backyard, just to prove we were being paranoid. Around midnight, I checked the live feed from my phone. Nothing. Just an empty yard, the trees swaying slightly in the wind. I relaxed. Maybe the thing from last night had been my imagination. Maybe I was overthinking. Then the camera glitched. The screen flickered. For a second, the image froze. Then something appeared at the edge of the frame. Something tall stepped slowly out from the tree line. My heart started pounding. The camera light barely illuminated it, but I could see enough. It was at least 7 feet tall. Its limbs were long and thin like a spider, and its skin looked pale gray, almost like wet clay. The thing moved in a strange jerking motion, like it wasn't used to walking upright. It stepped into the yard, slow, careful. Then it turned its head toward the camera. And I swear to God, it smiled, not a normal smile. Its mouth stretched way too wide across its face, like the skin was tearing. I felt my stomach drop. The creature slowly walked toward the house. Closer, closer. Then suddenly the camera went black, connection lost. I ran to the window. The backyard was pitch dark, and for a moment, I thought I saw something standing near the porch, watching the house. Then it moved, fast, too fast. It disappeared behind the side of the house. And that's when I heard something that still haunts me. From right outside the wall, I heard my own voice, whispering, "Hey, open the window." But I was standing in my room, and I wasn't speaking. My blood turned cold. Then the whisper came again, perfectly copying my voice. "Open the window." Something scratched the wall slowly, dragging long claws across the wood. Then it said something else, this time in Jake's voice. "Bro, let me in." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stood there frozen in complete silence, because whatever was outside was learning our voices, and it was still in my backyard. Story 2, it learned how to speak. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. After hearing that thing outside my wall, copying my voice, I sat on my bed with a baseball bat in my hands until sunrise. Every sound made my heart jump. Every creak in the house felt like it was getting closer. But the thing that scared me the most was the silence. Because after that last whisper, "Bro, let me in," everything outside became completely quiet. Too quiet. No wind, no insects, no animals. Just silence. Around 5:40 a.m., the sun finally started rising. I forced myself to look out the window again. The backyard was empty. No creature, no movement. But when I went outside, I instantly felt that horrible feeling again, like I was being watched. The yard looked worse than before. The strange 3-toed footprints were everywhere now. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Some of them were pressed right against the wall under my window, and long scratch marks ran across the wooden siding of the house. Deep grooves, like something had been dragging claws along it for hours. I took pictures and sent them to Jake. He came over immediately. When he saw the scratches, his face turned pale. "Dude, that thing was right here." I nodded slowly. "I know." Then Jake asked something that made the fear inside me grow even worse. "Did you hear anything last night?" I hesitated. Then I told him everything. The footsteps, the tapping on the glass, the creature on the camera, and the voices. Jake laughed nervously at first. "Man, you're messing with me." "I wish I was." I showed him the camera footage. We sat in silence as the video played. The moment the tall, pale figure stepped out of the woods, Jake stopped smiling. "What the hell is that?" The creature's body looked even more disturbing on video. Its arms hung almost to its knees. Its head twitched slightly every few seconds, like it was trying to adjust itself. And that smile. Jake suddenly paused the video. Wait, he zoomed in. The creature's eyes were reflecting the camera light, but they weren't glowing like an animal's. They were completely black. No white, no pupils, just two empty dark holes staring at the camera. Jake slowly leaned back. Bro, that's not an animal. I know. We stood there for a moment, trying to process what we were seeing. Then Jake said something strange. Play the end again. I rewound the footage to the moment before the camera cut out. The creature was walking toward the house, but Jake pointed at something I hadn't noticed before. Look at its mouth. As the creature got closer, its lips were moving, like it was trying to form words. But no sound came from the camera. It looked like someone learning how to speak. My stomach dropped. That thing had been watching us, listening to us, learning. That night, Jake insisted on staying over. 2 people are better than 1, he said. But honestly, I don't think either of us believed we could stop whatever was out there. We decided to sit in the living room where we could see the backyard through the sliding glass door. Around midnight, the forest behind the yard became darker than usual, almost like the shadows were thicker. The wind stopped again, and once again, everything went silent. Jake noticed it first. Do you hear that? Hear what? Exactly. No crickets, no frogs, nothing. Just that same heavy silence. Then suddenly, crunch. A slow step in the leaves near the woods. Jake and I both turned toward the glass door. Another step. Crunch. Something was walking out there again. Slow. Heavy. Then we saw it. A tall shape emerging from the trees. The same long arms, the same pale body. But this time, it wasn't alone. 2 more shapes stepped out behind it. My chest tightened. There were 3 of them, all tall, all thin, all moving with those strange, jerky motions. They stopped at the edge of the yard, just standing there, watching the house. Jake whispered, "Dude, there's more of them." One of the creatures tilted its head sharply. Then suddenly, it spoke. But the voice that came out was my mother's voice, perfectly copied. "Sweetheart, open the door." My blood turned to ice. Jake slowly whispered, "That's messed up." The creature tried again. This time the voice sounded broken, like a recording glitching. "Open the door?" Another one spoke, but this voice was Jake's. "Bro, it's cold. Let us in." Jake cursed under his breath. They were testing voices, practicing them, trying to sound human. The first creature slowly stepped forward, then another, and another. They were coming closer to the house. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. "Don't move," Jake whispered. The creatures stopped about 20 feet from the door. Then one of them crouched down. Its bones made a horrible cracking sound as it lowered itself. Its head twisted sideways again, and it smiled. This time the voice that came out was perfectly clear. My voice. "Why won't you open the door?" I felt sick. Jake whispered, "Don't answer it." But then the creature said something that made my entire body freeze. It spoke in a quiet whisper, a voice neither of us recognized. "We watched you for many nights." The other creatures slowly moved closer, their long fingers dragging across the ground. "We learn by listening." My hands started shaking. Jake grabbed my arm. "Lock the doors. Now." I rushed to lock everything in the house. Front door, back door, windows. When I returned to the living room, the creatures were gone. The yard was empty again. Jake and I stared outside in silence. "Did they leave?" he asked. I was about to answer when something lightly tapped the glass door. Tap. We both looked down slowly, right against the glass. A long gray hand pressed flat against it. The creature had crawled up to the door without us seeing. Its face slowly rose into view. That wide stretched smile was inches from the glass, and in a perfectly normal human voice it whispered, "We know where you sleep." Behind it, the other two shapes slowly stood up from the darkness, and then all three of them began walking toward the house. Story 3. The woods are full of them. The creature's face was pressed against the glass door. Its skin looked stretched and damp, like something that had just crawled out of mud. Its black eyes stared directly into the house, directly at us. And that smile, it was wider than any human mouth should be. Jake slowly stepped backward. "Don't move," he whispered, but the creature already knew we were there. It tilted its head slightly, like a curious animal observing prey. Then it spoke again. This time it sounded exactly like Jake. "Why are you scared?" Jake's face went pale. Behind that creature, the other two figures were slowly walking across the yard toward the house. Their movements were jerky and unnatural, like puppets learning how to use their limbs. I suddenly realized something terrifying. They weren't rushing. They weren't attacking. They were studying us, learning. The creature at the glass slowly lifted one finger and tapped the door again. Tap, then again, tap. And then it whispered in my voice again, "Let us in." Jake grabbed my arm and pulled me away from the door. "Basement," he whispered, "now." We quietly backed away from the living room and moved toward the basement stairs. As we stepped down into the darkness, I heard something outside that made my stomach twist. More footsteps, not just 3, dozens. Heavy crunching sounds coming from the woods behind the house. Jake froze halfway down the stairs. "Do you hear that?" I nodded slowly. Something was moving in the forest. A lot of somethings. We quickly shut the basement door and locked it. The basement was dark except for one small bulb hanging from the ceiling. Dust floated in the air, and the smell of damp concrete filled the room. For a few minutes, everything was silent. Then, thud. Something hit the back door upstairs. Jake and I looked at each other. Another thud echoed through the house. They were pushing against the door. Then came the scratching, long claws dragging across the wood. Scrap! The sound made my skin crawl. Jake whispered, "They're trying to get in." Another heavy impact shook the house. Then another. Thud. Thud. And then suddenly, silence. The scratching stopped. The banging stopped. Everything went quiet again. For a moment I thought maybe they had left. But then we heard something far worse. Footsteps. Inside the house. Slow footsteps walking across the living room floor above us. Jake's eyes widened. How? The doors were locked. The windows were shut. But something was definitely walking around upstairs. Then we heard a voice. My voice. Coming from the living room. "Jake, come upstairs." Jake slowly shook his head. Then another voice echoed through the house. This one sounded exactly like Jake. "Bro, it's safe now." My chest tightened. "They got in," I whispered. But how? Neither of us moved. The footsteps continued walking through the house, room to room, like something exploring, opening doors, moving furniture, learning the layout. Then we heard more footsteps enter the house. Multiple sets. 3, 4, 5. Too many to count. Jake whispered something that made my blood run cold. "They're bringing more." Above us, the creatures were now moving all over the house, and they kept speaking, testing voices. Some sounded like me, Some sounded like Jake, some sounded like completely different people, but one voice suddenly stood out, a voice that made both of us freeze, my dad's voice. Son, come upstairs. My father died 3 years ago. Jake looked at me slowly. How do they know that voice? I couldn't answer, because I realized something horrifying. These creatures weren't just copying voices from tonight. They had been listening for a long time, maybe weeks, maybe months, maybe even years. Suddenly, a loud crash shook the floor above us, then footsteps rushed toward the basement door. Jake and I both stared at it. The handle slowly began to turn, but the door was locked. The handle rattled again. Then a voice whispered from the other side, my exact voice. Please, help me, Jake whispered. Don't respond. The whisper came again, this time sounding terrified. Jake, they're in the house. Help! The door handle twisted violently. Then something slammed into the door. Bang! The entire frame shook. Another hit. Bang! The wood cracked slightly. Then a horrible sound came from the other side. Bones cracking, limbs shifting, like something reshaping its body. The creature spoke again, but this time the voice was different, deeper, older, not human. We are learning. Jake slowly backed away. Dude, we need to leave. But the only exit was upstairs, where they were. The basement door suddenly bent inward as something heavy leaned against it. Then a long gray finger slowly pushed through a crack in the wood. The nail was black and sharp like a claw. The voice whispered again. We watched your kind for a long time. More fingers pushed through the wood. The door was splitting open. We will wear your voices. The wood snapped loudly. We will wear your faces. Jake grabbed a metal pipe from the floor. But I knew it wouldn't matter, because at that moment, we heard something outside the basement window. More footsteps in the yard. Dozens, maybe hundreds, and faint whispers coming from the woods, all repeating the same sentence, over and over. Let us in. The basement door finally cracked open. A pale gray face slowly pushed through the gap. That same impossible smile stretched across its mouth, but the voice that came out was mine, perfect, identical. Don't worry, it whispered. You won't need your voice anymore. Behind it, more creatures were gathering in the darkness of the basement stairs, and outside the house, the woods were full of them, watching, waiting, learning.